The morning my entire life was liquidated to pay for a party started with the smell of burnt pot roast. It was a heavy, greasy scent that hung in the hallway of our house, the kind of smell that stuck to your clothes and made the air feel thick. My mother, Deirdre, always overcooked the Sunday roast when she was nervous. I should have known then. I should have seen the signs when I walked into the kitchen and saw my father, Garrick, staring at his coffee mug like it held the secrets of the universe, refusing to meet my eyes. My name is Kieran. I was 18 years old, and in exactly 7 days, I was supposed to be packing my bags for the University of Washington. I had a full-ride scholarship for tuition, but the living expenses, the dorms, the books, and the high-performance laptop I needed for my software engineering degree were all supposed to come from the college fund. It was a fund I had contributed to since I was 12, mowing lawns, fixing neighbors' Wi-Fi, and working weekends at a car wash. My parents matched what I put in. It was the deal. It was the contract. I sat down at the table, the wood cool under my forearms. I was buzzing with energy. I finally got the course list, I said, breaking the silence. I pulled my phone out, tapping the screen. Professor Harrison is teaching the advanced algorithms class. Do you know how hard it is to get into that as a freshman? I have to buy the materials by Wednesday, so I was thinking we could go to the bank tomorrow morning and withdraw the first semester's budget. The silence that followed was loud. It wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. My dad cleared his throat, a rough, grating sound. Mom turned away from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron aggressively, as if she were trying to scrub off a stain that wouldn't go away. Kieran, Dad said. His voice was flat. We need to talk about the fund. Okay, I said, putting my phone down. My stomach tightened. Is there a problem with the bank? Because I can call them. The money isn't in the bank, Mom said. She said it quickly, ripping the band-aid off. It's gone. I blinked. I actually laughed a little, a short, confused exhale. What do you mean gone? Like, transferred? Did you move it to a high-yield account? We spent it, Dad said. He looked up then, his eyes hard, daring me to challenge him. We withdrew the total balance on Friday. $90,000. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. $90,000. That was everything. That was my freedom. That was 4 years of security. You spend it? I whispered. On what? Did someone get sick? Is the house falling down? It's for Bianca, Mom said, her voice softening into that syrupy tone she used whenever she talked about my sister. You know she's been so stressed about the wedding. The venue she wanted, the Celestia Penthouse, required a full upfront payment to secure the date. And then there was the catering deposit, and the designer needed cash for the custom silk import. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor tiles. You gave my college fund to Bianca for a party? A one-night party? It is not just a party, Kieran. Mom snapped, her face flushing red. It is the most important day of her life. She is marrying Preston. Do you know what kind of family Preston comes from? We have to match their level. We cannot look cheap. This wedding is an investment in this family's future. And what about my future? I asked, my voice shaking. I start school in a week. How am I supposed to eat? How am I supposed to live? Dad slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. You are a man, Kieran. You have a brain. You can work. You can take out loans. Thousands of students do it every year. Why are you so special that you can't work for what you want? I did work. I yelled. Half that money was mine. I earned it. And you lived under our roof, Dad countered coldly. You ate our food. You used our electricity. Consider your contribution to that fund as back rent for 18 years. I looked at them. Really looked at them. I saw the fear in my mother's eyes, the desperate need to please my sister and look rich in front of her friends. I saw the arrogance in my father's face, the belief that I was resilient enough to survive being thrown to the wolves, while Bianca was a delicate flower that needed to be paved in gold. She demanded the penthouse, Mom explained, as if that made it logical. She said she couldn't walk down the aisle anywhere else. It's her dream, Kieran. As a brother, it is your duty to sacrifice for her happiness. You'll figure it out. You always do. I looked at the burnt roast sitting on the counter. It looked like a lump of coal. Just like the future they had just handed me. I didn't storm out immediately. I couldn't. My brain was still trying to process the sheer scale of the theft. I went upstairs to find Bianca. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to know if she knew she was cannibalizing my life for her centerpieces. Bianca was in her room, surrounded by mood boards. Samples of fabric, cream, ivory, eggshell, champagne, were scattered all over her bed like expensive confetti. She was 24, beautiful in a way that required high maintenance, and currently, she was frowning at a piece of cardstock. "Kieran," she said without looking up. "Tell Mom the embossing on these invites is wrong. It looks cheap. I specifically asked for gold leaf, not gold foil." "They took my money," I said. I stood in the doorway, gripping the frame. Bianca finally looked up. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. "Oh, God. Are you going to be dramatic about this? Mom said you might throw a tantrum." "A tantrum?" I stepped into the room. The smell of her expensive perfume, something floral and cloying, filled my nose. "Bianca, that was $90,000. That was my degree. That was my rent. You took it for a venue." She rolled her eyes and stood up, smoothing down her silk robe. "It's not just a venue, Kieran. It's the Celestia. It's the premier rooftop in the city. Preston's business partners are going to be there. This wedding isn't just about love, it's about networking. It's about social capital. You wouldn't understand, you're just a student." "I won't be a student," I shouted. "I can't afford to be a student anymore because you needed a view of the skyline." "Lower your voice," she hissed. "You're being incredibly selfish. You're 18. You have your whole life to make money. I only have this one moment. Preston is going to be huge. He's closing a massive deal in crypto next month. Once that hits, 90 grand will look like pocket change. We'll probably pay you back double. But right now, we need liquidity. So ask Preston for the money," I said. Bianca scoffed. "His assets are tied up in investments. That's how rich people work, Kieran. They don't keep cash sitting around. That's why Mom and Dad stepped up. They understand vision." Just then, the sound of a heavy engine rumbling in the driveway cut through our argument. I looked out the window. A sleek, black sports car was pulling in. It was a rental. I saw the barcode sticker on the side window. Preston. He walked into the house a minute later, wearing sunglasses indoors and a suit that looked tailored but was made of shiny, cheap material if you looked too close. "Ladies," Preston announced, ignoring me completely to kiss Bianca on the cheek. "The florist just confirmed. The wall of white roses is a go. It's going to cost an extra 12,000, but baby, you deserve it. See?" Bianca beamed at me, a cruel, triumphant smile. "Preston makes things happen." 12,000, I repeated numbly. "That's a year of housing for me." Preston turned to me, sliding his sunglasses down his nose. "Hey, little man. Heard you're making a contribution to the big day. Respect. That's what family does. We leverage assets to support the strongest players. When I'm running this city, I'll remember you helped buy the flowers." He winked. He actually winked at me. I looked at Bianca, glowing with pride at her fiancé's empty words. I looked at Preston, a man who spoke in buzzwords and drove rental cars to impress neighbors. And I realized something terrifying. They weren't just greedy. They were delusional. They truly believed that burning my future to warm their hands was a sound economic strategy. "You're not going to pay me back," I said quietly. "None of you are ever going to pay me back." "Don't be so negative," Bianca sighed, turning back to her fabric swatches. "It's bad energy for the wedding. Just go apply for a loan or something. And close the door on your way out." The click of the door latch sounded like a gunshot in my head. That was it. The severance was complete. They hadn't just taken my money, they had taken my place in the family. I wasn't a son or a brother anymore. I was a resource they had depleted. I walked down the hallway to my room. It felt like I was walking through a stranger's house. The family photos on the wall, Mom hugging Bianca at graduation, Dad shaking Preston's hand at a barbecue, suddenly looked like propaganda. I wasn't in any of the recent ones. I was usually the one holding the camera. I entered my room and locked the door. I didn't cry. I think I was in shock, or maybe my brain had simply switched into survival mode. I grabbed my duffel bag from the closet. The black one I used for gym class. I didn't pack everything. I didn't want everything. I wanted nothing that they could claim they gave me. I left the expensive gaming console Dad had bought me 3 Christmases ago to shut me up. I left the brand-name sneakers Mom had bought to make sure I didn't embarrass them at the country club. I packed 3 pairs of jeans. 7 t-shirts. My hoodie. My underwear. And most importantly, my laptop. I had bought that laptop with my own money from the car wash job. It was a beat-up machine, 3 years old, but I had upgraded the RAM myself. It was my only tool. I reached under my mattress and pulled out an envelope. $420. That was it. That was my net worth. I stood in the middle of the room for a second, looking around. I stripped the sheets off the bed. I didn't want to leave them the satisfaction of a made bed. I wanted the room to look like a skeleton. It was raining when I went downstairs. A heavy, gray Seattle drizzle. The house was quiet, they were all in the living room now, probably looking at flower arrangements and drinking wine, celebrating the investment. I opened the front door. The cool air hit my face, smelling of wet asphalt and pine needles. It smelled like freedom. Going somewhere? I froze. Dad was standing in the archway of the living room, holding a glass of red wine. He didn't look concerned. He looked annoyed that I was letting the cold air in. "I'm leaving," I said. "Don't be dramatic, Kieran," he said, taking a sip. "You're running away because you didn't get your way? That's childish. You'll be back in 2 days when you run out of cash and realize the real world doesn't care about your feelings." "I'm not running away," I said, hoisting the bag onto my shoulder. "I'm moving out. Since I'm paying rent for the last 18 years, consider my lease terminated." Dad sneered. "Fine. Go. But listen to me, Kieran. If you walk out that door, don't you dare come crawling back when you fail. Don't come asking for a handout when you realize you're nothing without this family. We are building a dynasty here with Preston. You're either on the team or you're out." "A dynasty," I repeated, almost laughing. "You're building a house of cards, Dad. And when it falls, don't call me." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my house key. I dropped it on the small table by the door. It made a sharp clatter against the wood. "Goodbye, Garrick," I said. I didn't call him Dad. I saw his eyes widen slightly at the disrespect, but I was already out the door. I closed it behind me, not slamming it, just shutting it firmly. I walked down the driveway, past Preston's rental sports car, past my mother's meticulously manicured hydrangeas. I walked 3 miles to the bus stop in the rain. I sat on the wet bench, shivering, clutching my bag. I had no plan. I had no dorm room. I had no tuition. But as I watched the headlights of passing cars cut through the gloom, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. They couldn't take anything else from me. I was at zero. And there is a specific kind of power in having nothing left to lose. The first week was a blur of humiliation and logistics. I couldn't go to the dorms. I couldn't register for classes without the payment. I went to the registrar's office and deferred my acceptance for a year. The lady behind the desk looked at my soaking wet hoodie and my desperate eyes and waived the deferral fee. That was the first act of kindness I had received, and it came from a stranger. I found a used car on Craigslist. A 20-year-old sedan with a rusted fender and an engine that sounded like a dying lawnmower. I bought it for $300. That left me with $120. That car became my home. I parked it in the back lot of a 24-hour gym. I used the remaining cash to buy a membership, not to work out, but for the showers. Real poverty isn't romantic. It's boring, and it smells bad. It's spending 3 hours figuring out where you can pee without buying a coffee. It's counting the minutes until the bakery throws out the day-old bagels so you can dumpster dive. I got a job as a dishwasher at a diner near the university. It paid minimum wage, under the table because I didn't have a permanent address. My hands were constantly raw and smelling of old grease and bleach. Every night, I would curl up in the back seat of my car, wrapping myself in my laundry to stay warm. The windows would fog up with my breath. I would open my laptop, tethering it to the weak Wi-Fi signal stealing from the coffee shop across the street, and I would learn. I couldn't afford college, so I decided to learn everything the internet could teach me. I spent nights on coding forums, watching free lectures from MIT and Stanford, building terrible websites just to break them and fix them again. Coding became my escape. In the code, everything was logical. If there was an error, you could find it. You could fix it. It wasn't like my family, where the error was me, and the fix was to erase me. One night, about 3 months in, I was sitting in the car, eating a cup of instant noodles that I had made using hot water from the gym bathroom. My phone buzzed. I knew I shouldn't look. I had blocked their numbers, but I hadn't blocked them on social media. It was a form of self-harm, I guess. I opened Instagram. Bianca had posted a story. It was a video. She was at a spa, wearing a white robe, holding a glass of cucumber water. The caption read, "Pre-wedding detox. So grateful for my family making my dreams come true. #blessed, #bride-to-be, #penthouse life." I swiped. The next photo was mom and dad at a tasting for the wedding menu. They were laughing, holding forks with lobster tail. Dad looked happier than I had ever seen him. I looked down at my instant noodles. The broth was lukewarm. A piece of dried corn floated on top. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. I was furious. They were eating lobster on my tuition. They were getting massages with the money that was supposed to buy my books. But then, something shifted. The anger didn't disappear, but it hardened. It crystallized into something cold and sharp. It became fuel. I took a screenshot of Bianca's post. I set it as my desktop background. Okay, I whispered to the empty car. You want to play the game of who is worth more? Let's play. I closed the noodle cup and opened my code editor. I didn't sleep that night. I wrote a script that automated data entry for the diner's inventory system. The next day, I showed it to the owner. He didn't understand it, but he saw that it saved him 5 hours of work a week. He gave me a $50 raise and let me sleep in the storage room on rainy nights. It wasn't much. But it was a start. I wasn't Kieran the son anymore. I was Kieran the machine. And machines don't need parents. They just need power. Exactly 1 year later, my sister got her dream wedding. It was a Saturday in June, the kind of day where the sky is so blue it looks photoshopped. I wasn't invited. I hadn't spoken to a single member of my family in 365 days. But I was there, digitally speaking. A cousin of mine, one of the few who hadn't blocked me, was live streaming the ceremony on Facebook. I sat in my room. I had upgraded from the car to a room in a shared basement apartment in the sketchy part of Tacoma. It smelled like mold and stale cigarette smoke, but it had a desk and a power outlet that worked. That was all I needed. On my left monitor, code was scrolling down the screen in a waterfall of green and white. I was debugging a back-end system for a local logistics company. It was grunt work, boring and repetitive, paying $20 an hour. On my right monitor, the Celestia Penthouse was glowing. The venue was insane. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Space Needle. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my entire life's earnings. And flowers. My God, the flowers. Thousands of white roses covered every surface. I stared at them, calculating. There goes my sophomore year tuition. There goes my meal plan. The music swelled. The doors opened. Bianca walked down the aisle. She looked stunning. I hate to admit it, but she did. She was wearing a dress that looked like it was woven from moonlight. Mom was crying in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Dad was puffing his chest out, looking like the King of England. Preston stood at the altar in a white tuxedo. He looked like a toothpaste commercial. "Do you take this, man?" The officiant began. I took a bite of my dinner. It was a slice of cold pizza from the night before. The pepperoni was congealed. "I do," Bianca said, her voice trembling with performed emotion. "I do," Preston said, flashing a smile at the camera. I looked at the chat box on the side of the livestream. People were commenting, "Couple of the century, so rich and beautiful, goals." I felt sick. Not jealous. Just sick. It was a play. A performance funded by stolen goods. They were celebrating a union built on the ashes of my future. I minimized the window. I couldn't watch the kiss. I turned my attention back to the code. But I was stuck. There was a security vulnerability in the architecture I couldn't patch. I logged into a dark mode forum called The Void, a place where insomnia-ridden coders hung out. I posted my problem, architecture leaking memory in the authentication loop. Tried standard patches. Nothing works. 3 minutes later, a user named ZeroSum replied. "You're looking at it wrong. The leak isn't in the auth loop. It's in the session token generation. Rewrite lines 40 through 55 using this logic." Attached was a snippet of code. It was elegant. Brutally efficient. I applied it. The system purred like a kitten. I messaged ZeroSum privately. "Thanks. That was genius." "Who are you?" "Just another ghost in the machine," came the reply. "I saw your repo. You're building a decentralized verification protocol? That's ambitious for a kid." "I'm not a kid," I typed back. "I'm hungry." "Hunger is good," ZeroSum wrote. "I'm Margot. Meet me at the coffee shop on 4th and Pike tomorrow. If you're real, we might be able to break something together." I looked at the time. It was 2 in the morning. The wedding reception was probably in full swing now. They were probably toasting with Dom Perignon. I toasted the screen with my water bottle. To Margot, I whispered. That night, while Bianca danced her first dance on a floor covered in my money, I found the partner who would help me earn it back. Tenfold. Margot was nothing like Bianca. She was 30, with short, chopped hair dyed a violently bright purple and piercings in places I didn't know you could pierce. She wore oversized hoodies and looked like she hadn't slept since 2010. But her mind was sharp as a diamond. We started working together. We called our project Ironclad. Ideally, it was a security layer for small businesses that couldn't afford enterprise-level protection. We worked out of her apartment, which was even smaller than mine. We ate rice and beans. We drank cheap energy drinks. We coded until our fingers cramped and our eyes burned. 6 months in, we had a prototype. It worked. It was fast. It was impenetrable. We needed money to scale. We needed servers. We needed a lawyer to incorporate. We needed $50,000. We pitched to 10 local investors. We got rejected 10 times. "You're too young," one guy said, dismissing me without looking at the deck. "You don't have a college degree," another said, pointing at my resume. "Why should I trust a dropout with my security?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him why I dropped out. But I didn't. Victims don't get funding. Winners get funding. The low point came in November. Margot got bronchitis. She didn't have insurance. She was coughing up blood in the bathroom, shaking with fever. I spent my last $80 on antibiotics and an inhaler for her. We were broke. Literally $0 in the business account. The server bill was due in 2 days. If we didn't pay, Ironclad would go offline. I was sitting on the floor, staring at the overdue notice on my screen, when my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a long time. "Deirdre calling." I picked up. I don't know why. Maybe I was weak. Maybe I wanted to hear a voice that wasn't Margot coughing. "Hello?" I said. My voice was raspy. "Kieran." Mom's voice was bright, chirpy. "Oh, thank goodness you picked up. Your father said you wouldn't." "What do you want, Mom?" "We just wanted to share some good news," she said. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I was alive. "Preston just bought a new car. A Range Rover. It's beautiful, Kieran. Leather seats, panoramic roof. He's doing so well." I closed my eyes. "That's great, Mom. He just closed a huge deal," she continued. "He's such a visionary. You know, we were talking about you the other night. We know things might be hard for you right now." "I'm fine," I lied. "Well, Preston is very generous," she said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "He said if you were willing to come over for dinner, apologize for your behavior at the wedding, well, for not coming, he might be able to find a position for you. He needs someone to wash the company cars and maybe run errands. It pays minimum wage, but it's a start." Silence. Pure, ringing silence. She wanted me to wash the car of the man who helped steal my tuition. She wanted me to apologize for being robbed. "Are you there, Kieran?" "I'm here," I said. My voice was deadly calm. "So? Should I tell him you're coming? It would make Bianca so happy to see you humble yourself." "Mom," I said. "Tell Preston to enjoy the car. I hope the leather is comfortable." "Kieran, don't be stubborn, and tell him," I interrupted, "that when I come back, I won't be washing his car. I'll be buying the dealership." I hung up. My hand was shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Pure, nuclear-grade rage. I turned to Margot, who was watching me from the couch, wrapped in 3 blankets. "We are not giving up," I said. "Get your coat." "Where are we going?" she wheezed. "There is a tech summit downtown," I said. "Tickets are $500. We can't afford them. So we're going to sneak in." The convention center was a fortress. Security guards in black suits, badge scanners at every door. Inside, the titans of tech were gathering. Venture capitalists, CEOs, the people who wrote checks with 6 zeros. Margot and I walked around the perimeter. It was raining again. Of course, it was raining. "The loading dock," Margot pointed. "Catering trucks are coming in." We waited. A truck with the logo Gourmet Bites pulled up. The driver hopped out to sign a clipboard. "Run," I whispered. We sprinted. We ducked under the closing bay door just as it hit the concrete. We were in. We navigated through the kitchen, dodging waiters carrying trays of shrimp cocktail. We ditched our wet coats in a supply closet and straightened our clothes. I was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. I looked like a stagehand. We walked onto the main floor. The energy was electric. Billions of dollars were in this room. Target acquired, Margot whispered. She nodded toward the VIP lounge. Standing near the bar was Vaughn. I knew his face from magazines. He was a legendary investor, known for being ruthless but fair. He invested in people, not just products. He was surrounded by guys in suits, all pitching him. He looked bored. He was checking his watch. He's leaving, I said. We have to move. Vaughn turned and started walking toward the elevators. The suits tried to follow, but his bodyguard stepped in. I ran. I didn't care about security. I dodged a waiter, jumped over a velvet rope, and slid into the elevator just as the doors were closing. The bodyguard lunged, but it was too late. The doors shut. It was just me and Vaughn. He looked at me. He was tall, silver-haired, with eyes that could cut glass. He didn't look scared. He looked amused. You have 30 seconds before we hit the lobby, Vaughn said. And then my security team is going to tackle you. Make it count. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. My name is Kieran, I said. I built a security protocol that is lighter and faster than anything currently on the market. We call it Ironclad. Vaughn yawned. I hear that 10 times a day. Why is yours better? Because I built it while living in my car, I said. Vaughn stopped looking at the floor numbers. He looked at me. I don't have a degree, I said, speaking fast. I don't have a safety net. My parents gave my college fund to my sister for a wedding. I had been hungry for 2 years. I wrote this code because I had to protect the only thing I had left, my work. The other guys in the lobby? They want your money to buy a boat. I want your money so I can destroy them. The elevator dinged. We were at the lobby. The doors opened. 2 massive security guards were waiting. They stepped forward, reaching for me. Vaughn held up a hand. Wait. The guards froze. Vaughn looked at me. He studied my face, the dark circles under my eyes, the cheap haircut, the desperation radiating off me like heat. Hunger is the only thing you can't teach, Vaughn said quietly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a card. He scribbled something on the back. Come to my office tomorrow at 9. Bring your CTO. And bring a demo. He walked out. I stood in the elevator as the doors tried to close again. I looked at the card. It was heavy, textured cardstock. On the back, in messy ink, he had written, Seed Round. $200,000. I collapsed against the metal wall. I didn't scream. I just let out a breath I had been holding for 2 years. 3 years later. My alarm went off at 5 in the morning. I didn't hit snooze. I didn't need to. I was already awake. I sat up in bed. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, high thread count, cool against my skin. The room was silent. I walked out into the living room of my penthouse. It wasn't the Celestia. It was better. It was the top floor of the new spire in downtown Seattle. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the fog-covered city. My apartment was minimal. Concrete floors, a massive black leather sofa, a single piece of abstract art on the wall that Margot had painted. No clutter. No flowers. I walked to the kitchen and made an espresso. The machine cost $3,000 and made perfect coffee every time. I took the cup to the window and looked down. Somewhere down there, in the maze of streets, people were rushing to work. I wasn't rushing anymore. Ironclad Systems had gone public 6 months ago. The IPO was quiet but massive. We were now the back-end security for 3 major banks and a government defense contractor. My net worth was in the 8 figures. But nobody knew. I didn't do interviews. I didn't have a public Instagram. I drove a dark gray sedan that blended in with traffic. I wore unbranded black t-shirts. Margot was the public face of the company. She loved the spotlight. I loved the shadows. I unlocked my phone. I had a burner account I used to check on them. I pulled up Bianca's profile. The glamour was fading. The photos were still trying to be flashy, but the cracks were showing. A selfie in the mirror showed paint peeling in the background. She was posting a lot about selling luxury gently used handbags. Update: Chanel flap bag. Minor scuffs. Need gone ASAP. DM for price. I swiped to Preston's profile. It was a disaster. He was posting 5 times a day about crypto alpha and passive income masterclasses. He was using too many hashtags. Hashtag hustle, hashtag grindset, hashtag boss life. He looked tired. His hairline was receding. The investment deals he bragged about were clearly pyramid schemes. I swiped to Mom's Facebook. She posted a photo of the house, my childhood home. Caption: thinking of downsizing. This big old house is too much for just Garrick and me. Looking for a cozy condo. I zoomed in on the photo. There was a for sale sign in the yard, but it had a price reduced sticker slapped over it. They were struggling. The money was gone. The wedding, the cars, the investments, it had all evaporated. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter and hot. My phone buzzed. A text from Margot. Margot, quarterly earnings call in 20. You dialing in? Me, I'm listening. Margot, also, our legal team flagged something. A guy named Preston is trying to use our name to solicit investors for a blockchain scam. Says he has family connections to the CEO. I stared at the message. The audacity was breathtaking. Me, cease and desist. Immediately. And flag him with the SEC. Margot, done. Brutal. I love it. I put the phone down. I looked at the city below. I had won. I had the money, the power, and the peace. But the game wasn't over. They were bleeding out, and soon, the sharks would come. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the bait. I was the shark. Thanks for listening to the story so far. If you are enjoying this tale of revenge and success, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a comment below telling me which city you are listening from. Every comment helps this video reach more people. Thank you so much. The collapse didn't happen with a bang. It happened with a PDF attachment. It was a Tuesday afternoon in November. Seattle was drenched in its usual gray misery. I was in my office at Ironclad HQ, a converted warehouse in the tech district with exposed brick walls and servers humming in the basement. I was reviewing the quarterly projections when Margot walked in. She didn't knock. She never knocked. But this time, she wasn't holding a tablet or a coffee. She was holding a printed document. Her face was grim. You need to see this, she said, sliding the paper across my glass desk. I picked it up. It was a court filing. State of Washington versus Preston Miller. Wire fraud, Margot summarized, sitting on the edge of my desk. Securities fraud. Embezzlement. Turns out, your brother-in-law's crypto alpha fund was just a classic Ponzi scheme. He was taking money from new investors to pay off the old ones. But the new money stopped coming in last month. I scanned the document. The numbers were staggering. $2 million in missing funds. Where is he? I asked. Gone, Margot said. Boarded a flight to Belize 2 days ago. He emptied the joint accounts before he left. Bianca is listed as a person of interest, but mostly she's listed as a victim with significant liability. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Not sympathy, but the heavy realization of inevitable gravity. Liability? Did she sign anything? Kieran, Margot said softly. She signed everything. He made her a co-director of the LLC. She's on the hook for half the debt. And since Preston is gone, the creditors are coming for her assets. I turned back to my computer. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up public property records. I needed to see the damage. I searched for my parents' address. The house I grew up in. The house they claimed was their retirement nest egg. The record loaded. My breath hitched. There was a lien on the property. A second mortgage, taken out 6 months ago. Value, $450,000. Interest rate, 12%. They refinanced, I whispered. They bet the house. They bet on Preston, Margot corrected. They probably thought he just needed a bridge loan to close some massive deal. They put up the equity of their home to save his fake empire. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I could see it perfectly. The dinner table conversation. Preston, charming and panicked, spinning a tale about a temporary cash flow problem. Bianca, crying, saying they needed to support her husband. Mom and Dad, desperate to keep the illusion of success alive, signing the papers. They are underwater, I said. Preston took the cash and ran. The bank holds the note. Bianca has zero income. Mom and Dad are retired on a fixed pension that can't cover a mortgage payment of $4,000 a month. It gets worse, Margot said. I checked the docket. They haven't made a payment in 90 days. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings yesterday. I stood up and walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the city lights below. 7 years ago, they told me I was a bad investment. They liquidated my future to buy a party. Now, the party was over, the host had fled, and they were left with a hangover that was going to cost them the roof over their heads. I should have felt triumphant. I should have popped a bottle of champagne. This was justice. This was karma writing a check that cleared instantly. But I didn't feel joy. I felt a hollow, aching exhaustion. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know the impact is coming, you know the driver was drunk and reckless, but the sound of crunching metal still makes you flinch. Do they know you know? Margot asked. Not yet, I said. But they're desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. They'll find me. We have security, Margot reminded me. We have lawyers. I know, I said. But they don't want to sue me, Margot. They want to guilt me. And that is a weapon security guards can't stop. They found me 3 days later. I was in the middle of a code sprint, headphones on, deep in the flow state. My personal phone, the one with the unlisted number that only Margot and my doctor had, buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. But the area code was local. I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I answered. This is Kieran. Kieran? Oh, thank God. It was my mother. But gone was the chirpy, condescending tone from the car wash offer years ago. Her voice was thin, brittle, shaking with hysteria. How did you get this number? I asked calmly. Your father, he hired a private investigator, she sobbed. We had to. We didn't have a choice. Kieran, it's a nightmare. A nightmare. Preston, that bastard left us. He took everything. I know, I said. You know? She stopped crying for a second. You know? I read the news, Mom. Wire fraud is hard to miss. Then you know we need help, she said, her voice pitching up again. The bank, they sent a letter. A notice of default. They say if we don't pay $20,000 in arrears by Friday, they're going to lock us out. 20,000. We don't have it. Your father's 401k is empty. We gave it to Preston for the legal fees before he ran. Why are you calling me? I asked. Because your family, she screamed. It was a raw, primal sound. Because you have money. We saw the article in TechCrunch. The silent millionaire. That's you. You have millions, Kieran. You can write a check right now and save us. Save your sister. She's living in her old bedroom, she can't stop crying. She's pregnant, Kieran. She's 3 months pregnant. That hit me. A baby. A new generation born into this mess. Mom, I said. I'm sorry about the baby. Truly. But I can't help you. Can't? Or won't? Won't, I said. Let's be clear. You didn't lose this money because of bad luck. You lost it because you gambled. You gambled my tuition. You gambled your house. You bet everything on the pretty lie instead of the hard truth. Don't you dare lecture me, sudden anger replaced the tears. We raised you. We fed you. You owe us. Then, I heard a scuffle on the other end. The phone was snatched away. Listen to me, you little ingrate, Bianca's voice hissed. She sounded ragged, vicious. You think you're so special because you got lucky with some computer code? You're nothing. You're a socially awkward nerd who abandoned his family. I need this house. My baby needs a home. You are going to pay off this mortgage. It is the least you can do after you humiliated us by not coming to the wedding. I actually laughed. It was a dark, dry laugh. I humiliated you? I asked. Bianca, you spent $90,000 of my money on a party to impress a man who is now on an FBI watch list. You aren't a victim. You're an accomplice. I deserve that house, she shrieked. I am the oldest. I am the daughter. Mom and Dad promised it to me. Well, I said, leaning back in my chair. It seems they promised it to the bank, too. And the bank has better lawyers. If you don't help us, she threatened, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, I will go to the press. I will tell everyone that the CEO of Ironclad Systems lets his pregnant sister sleep on the street. I will ruin your reputation. Go ahead, I said. My reputation is built on security and truth. Yours is built on fraud and filters. Let's see who the public believes. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking this time. I felt cold. Freezing cold. Like I had just stepped out of a freezer. I texted Margot. Me, level 5 security protocol. They made contact. Threats of blackmail. Margot, on it. Legal team is drafting a restraining order. Do you want me to leak the story first? Control the narrative? Me, no. Let them scream. Silence is louder. They didn't go to the press immediately. They tried to confront me in person first. 2 days later, on a Friday morning, the day the bank payment was due, my security chief called me. Mr. Voss, he said. There is a disturbance in the lobby. 3 individuals claiming to be your family. They don't have appointments. I pulled up the security feed on my second monitor. There they were. In high definition. My father looked 10 years older. His suit was wrinkled, his posture slumped. My mother was wearing a trench coat, frantically arguing with the receptionist. And Bianca, she looked haunting. Her roots were showing, her face was pale and puffy, but she was holding her head high, pointing a manicured finger at the security guard's chest. I demand to see my brother. I could hear her screaming through the audio feed. He owns this building. Tell him to come down here. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, looked terrified. Ma'am, please lower your voice. Mr. Voss is in a meeting. He is hiding. Bianca yelled. She turned to the few people waiting in the lobby, clients, potential partners. He is hiding from his own flesh and blood. He is a monster. I watched, my hand hovering over the mouse. Part of me wanted to go down there. Part of me wanted to hand them a check for $20,000 just to make them go away. It was pocket change to me now. I spent more than that on server upgrades last month. But I knew it wouldn't be 20,000. It would be the mortgage. Then the baby clothes. Then the new car. Then the legal fees for Preston. It would never end. If I fed the beast, it would eat me whole. Remove them, I told the security chief. Peacefully. But get them off the property. I watched as two large guards stepped forward. They were professional but firm. They escorted my screaming sister and weeping mother toward the revolving doors. My father didn't fight. He just looked at the camera, looked right at me, or where he thought I was, with a look of utter defeat. An hour later, the social media attack began. Bianca posted a video on TikTok. She was crying in her car. My billionaire brother won't help his pregnant sister save our childhood home. He stole our family's trust and abandoned us. Hashtag ironclad scam, hashtag toxic family. It got a few thousand views. Some people commented, calling me a jerk. But then, the internet detectives arrived. Someone found the court records of Preston's fraud. Someone else found the foreclosure notice listing the second mortgage. A user named TruthSeeker99 commented, "Wait, your husband stole $2 million and fled to Belize? And your parents remortgaged their house to help him? Why is this your brother's fault?" Another user found an old post from my cousin about the college fund theft. The tide turned instantly. The comments section became a war zone, but not against me. Against them. So let me get this straight, one comment read. "You stole his tuition for a wedding, and now you want him to bail you out?" The audacity is unmatched. Bianca deleted the video 3 hours later. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. They were drowning, and they were trying to drag me down to use me as a raft. That afternoon, a courier arrived at my parents' house. It wasn't a check from me. It was a process server from the bank. The deadline had passed. The foreclosure was final. The sheriff was scheduled for Monday morning. I stood in my office, looking at the city skyline as the sun went down. The lights of Seattle were twinkling on. Somewhere out there, in that darkness, my family was packing boxes. I sent one final text to Margot. Me, Monday morning. I'm taking the day off. Margot, where are you going? Me, to the old neighborhood. I need to see the end. Wow, things are getting intense. The family is desperate, and Kieran is standing his ground. What would you do in his shoes? Would you help them, or would you let them face the consequences? Let me know in the comments below. Monday morning arrived with a biting chill in the air. The sky over Seattle was a bruised shade of purple and gray, threatening a storm that hadn't quite broken yet. I drove my car, a matte black sedan with tinted windows that rendered me invisible to the outside world, down the familiar streets of the neighborhood I hadn't visited in 7 years. The houses here were still the same. The manicured lawns, the oak trees lining the sidewalks, the aggressive sense of middle-class stability. But as I turned the corner onto Cedar Avenue, the illusion shattered. I parked 3 houses down, killing the engine but leaving the heat running. I put on my sunglasses, even though there was no sun. I wasn't here to be seen. I was here to witness the closing ceremonies of a tragedy. There were 3 vehicles in my parents' driveway. One was a sheriff's department cruiser, its lights flashing silently. The other 2 were battered white box trucks with rapid eviction services stenciled on the sides in peeling red paint. The front door of my childhood home was wide open. It looked like a gaping wound. I watched as a team of 4 men in blue coveralls moved with brutal efficiency. They weren't movers. Movers are careful, they wrap things in bubble wrap and use lifting straps. These men were an eviction crew. Their job was volume and speed. One of them walked out carrying the velvet armchair my mother had bought for the formal living room, the room we weren't allowed to sit in as kids. He hauled it to the curb and dropped it. It landed with a soft, wet thud on the damp grass. Next came the dining room chairs. Then boxes marked kitchen and pantry. Then the TV, the 60-inch flat screen my dad had bought to watch football, propped precariously against a fire hydrant. It was a yard sale from hell. The physical accumulation of 30 years of family life was being vomited onto the front lawn for the neighbors to see. And the neighbors were watching. Curtains in the house across the street twitched. A woman walking her dog paused, pretending to check her phone, but she was filming. Then, the family emerged. My father, Garrick, walked out first. He looked like a ghost. He was wearing a tracksuit that hung loosely on his frame, holding a small cardboard box of files close to his chest. He stood by the mailbox, staring at the pile of furniture as if he didn't recognize it. He looked stripped of everything, his pride, his home, his identity. My mother followed. She was screaming. I couldn't hear her through the glass of my car, but I could see her mouth contorted in hysteria. She was grabbing the arm of a sheriff's deputy, pointing at the house, begging, pleading. The deputy, a large man with a stone face, gently but firmly removed her hand from his uniform. He said something to her, pointed to the street, and turned his back. And finally, Bianca. She came out carrying 2 Louis Vuitton suitcases. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a fur coat that looked ridiculous in the morning mist. She wasn't helping our parents. She wasn't carrying boxes of family albums or kitchenware. She was saving her designer clothes. She set the suitcases down on the wet pavement, right next to a puddle of oil. She looked around frantically, as if expecting a limousine to pull up and whisk her away from this nightmare. Instead, a man in coveralls walked out carrying a large, framed canvas. It was her wedding portrait. The one that had hung over the fireplace for 6 years. Bianca and Preston, smiling like royalty, surrounded by white roses in the penthouse. The man didn't prop it up. He tossed it. It landed face up on top of a garbage bag full of clothes. The glass cracked. A jagged line ran right through Preston's smiling face. Bianca let out a wail that I could hear even through the insulated glass of my car. She fell to her knees in the driveway, clutching her stomach. It was theatrical, yes, but for the first time it looked real. The stage had collapsed. The audience was gone. All that was left was the cold, wet concrete. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I thought I would feel satisfied. I thought watching the golden child kneel in the mud would feel like victory. But it just felt heavy. It was a waste. A massive, preventable waste of human potential, all because they refused to invest in reality. I was about to put the car in reverse and leave. I had seen enough. The house was gone. The debt was collected. But then, my mother turned. She was scanning the street, looking for a taxi, or maybe looking for a savior. Her eyes locked onto my car. It was a nondescript sedan, but she knew. A mother always knows, or maybe she just recognized the license plate frame from the dealership she knew I favored. She froze. Then, she started running. She ran down the driveway, stumbling in her heels, dodging the piles of boxes. She ran toward my car like a woman escaping a burning building. Kieran. I could hear her now. I didn't move. I didn't lock the doors. I just waited. She slammed her hands against the driver's side window. Her face was pressed against the glass, distorted and wet with tears and rain. Kieran. Open the door. Open the door, please. I took a deep breath. I pressed the button. The window rolled down with a smooth, electric hum. The smell of rain and desperation flooded the car. Mom, I said. Oh, thank God, she sobbed, reaching in to grab my arm. Her fingers dug into my jacket. You came. I knew you would come. You're a good boy. You've always been a good boy. I'm not here to help, Mom, I said. My voice was steady, low. I'm just watching. She froze, her eyes widening. What? No. No, you have to help. Look at this. Look at your father. They are throwing us out like trash. You have to buy the house back. Talk to the bank. Write a check. Please, Kieran. For the baby. Bianca is having a baby. I looked past her. Bianca had seen me now. She was standing up, wiping her face, walking toward the car. She didn't look humble. She looked entitled, even now. She looked like she was approaching an employee who was late for a shift. You took your time, Bianca spat as she reached the window, leaning over Mom's shoulder. Get out of the car. Help us load the suitcases. We need to go to a hotel. A nice one. I can't stay in a Motel 6, I have allergies. I looked at them. The two women who had defined my worth by my utility to them. I'm not taking you to a hotel, I said. And I'm not buying the house. You have millions. Mom shrieked. We saw the news. You have millions of dollars sitting in a bank. How can you be so cruel? We are your family. Family? I repeated. I unlocked my phone and held up the screen. It was the photo of the burnt roast from 7 years ago. The day they told me my future was gone. 7 years ago, you sat me down at that dining table, the one currently getting rained on over there, and told me that taking my $90,000 was a necessary investment. You told me it was my duty to sacrifice for the family's image. That was different. Mom cried. We were trying to help your sister. And I am helping her, I said coldly. I am letting her experience the consequences of her choices. That is the most valuable lesson anyone can learn. You are a monster, Bianca hissed. I hope you rot with your money. I hope you die alone. I might die alone, I agreed. But I will die in a house that I own. A house that nobody can take away from me because I paid for it with my own sweat, not someone else's savings. I looked at my father. He hadn't moved from the mailbox. He was watching us, but he didn't come over. He hung his head. He knew. He was the only one who truly understood the transaction that had just concluded. The bill has come due, I said to my mother. You ordered the Penthouse life. Now you have to pay the tab. Where are we supposed to go? Mom whispered, her voice breaking into a terrified whimper. We have nowhere. I reached into the center console. I pulled out a small card. It wasn't a credit card. It was a business card for a local shelter and job placement agency that Ironclad donated to annually. They have beds, I said, handing it to her. And they have job training programs. It's never too late to learn how to work, Bianca. I hit the button. The window rolled up. Kieran. No. Kieran. My mother pounded on the glass. Bianca kicked the door. I put the car in drive. I didn't peel out. I didn't rev the engine. I just eased off the brake and drove away, slowly, leaving them standing in the rain amidst the wreckage of their delusions. I drove for an hour without a destination. I just drove until the shaking in my hand stopped. I ended up back at the office. It was the only place that made sense. When I walked in, Margot was sitting in the lounge area, holding 2 glasses of cheap whiskey. She didn't ask how it went. She knew. She handed me a glass. To closure, she said. I took the glass. To closure. We drank. The whiskey burned, grounding me. Did you save them? She asked quietly. No, I said. I saved myself. Good, she said. Because if you had written that check, they would have hated you for it. They would have resented needing you. This way, they hate you, but at least you kept your dignity. I walked to the balcony. The rain had stopped, and the sun was trying to break through the clouds. I thought about them. Last I heard, a cousin told me they had moved into a small, 2-bedroom rental in a rundown part of Everett. Dad was working as a greeter at a hardware store. Mom was cleaning houses, the irony wasn't lost on me. Bianca was working at a nail salon, furious at the world, raising her baby alone because Preston was still hiding in Central America. They were surviving. They were learning, finally, what life cost. And me? I stood on the balcony of my empire. I had 30 employees who depended on me. I had a product that protected millions of people. I had Margot, the best friend anyone could ask for. I didn't have parents to call on Sundays. I didn't have a sister to buy Christmas gifts for. There was a hole in my life where family was supposed to be. But as I looked out at the city, I realized that the hole wasn't bleeding anymore. It had scarred over. It was tough. It was ironclad. Some people say that blood is thicker than water. But when that blood is toxic, when it poisons you slowly over 18 years, you learn that water, clean, clear, honest water, is what actually sustains life. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped being the foundation they built their lives upon. And when I stepped away, they fell. That isn't cruelty. That's gravity. I finished my drink and set the glass down on the railing. The sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a beam of golden light across the city. It hit my face, warm and real. I turned back to Margot. "Let's get back to work," I said. "We have a new update to push." So, here's the question I leave you with tonight, standing there, watching my family lose everything they tried to steal from me. Was I wrong to drive away? Should I have been the bigger person and saved the people who threw me away? Or did I finally give them exactly what they deserved? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice served cold.